work it.
Say cheese! Cheese,
Work it.
Yeah.
Yes, worker. Ketchup.
Okay, everyone, I'm hiring you to do my son's confirmation party. What's the word? Oh, no. I just need 4
Bad job.
When you going?
Fun police, them. Bonafire for the fun police. I wear tie cup there.
Yeah, so I said,
Greetings.
So I work in that.
More greetings. Yo, my friend, where's security? Where fun police?
I know it's fun.
There ain't no fun police here, bro. The fun police haven't reached us yet.
Where's the fun police, man? He's hiding. He's putting on his cop clothes. Oh.
Excuse me.
Yes. Best dress.
Yes. That's the MC. Yes.
MC.
Yo, can you give me a hand for a second time?
Did you get to see my donation? Did you guys get to see the donation?
Picture?
Do I have to look at you?
No, you don't have to look at me. You can just go ahead and do exactly what you're doing.
What's your organization there?
Getting ready?
That's it.
Graduate from the West Indian College of Time. 5 minutes and we'll be ready to go. I would like to say thank you so much for your patience and reminding everybody that food tickets are over here. Our donation box is over here. And if anybody's curious as to what our donation is for, there's a trip, our group here, the AYU group, they're having a trip going to Africa next year. So they're starting their fundraising. So please be kind and donate as much as you can. I'm starting the donation off, by the way. I'm starting off the donation this evening with $20. And I'm asking y'all to match me, or double it, triple it even. So 5 minutes and we'll get going. Thank you for your patience.
for waiting. Thanks for being so patient. We're ready to roll. Would you stand for me, please? All of you. You won't mind it. Okay, I'm going to ask young people, please help us with this, right? I need you to be really quiet and listen. Right? Can you help us do this? Yeah. All right, great. Okay, so we're going to start our function tonight. And we're here to celebrate and to recognize a very important figure in our history, Brother Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El Shabazz. If he were alive, he would be 75 years old today. Right? Before we start the function, we're going to ask for some guidance and some protection from some people who have gone ahead of us. Because we know, as black people, that our ancestors play a very important role in our lives. And a lot of time we forget to honor them, to call their names, to mention them, to ask for their guidance and support. So we're going to do a little of that before we start the function, so that they will help us to have a very productive, very positive, very interesting, very enlightening evening. So when you leave tonight, you remember Brother Malcolm, and you think about what you can do personally to set an example and to live as black people in the way that he would want you to live, in terms of your personal life, in terms of things you can do for your friends, for the community, and so on. He was a very powerful figure. So what I'm going to do is something called libations. Anybody ever heard of libations?
Yeah.
Okay. We commonly say, when we say libations, it means to drink, right? But really, it means to symbolically pour some liquid in recognition of our ancestors, in asking them to guide us. And when we pour liquid, we are saying, use this to quench your thirst in the work that you do on our behalf every day, right? And a lot of folks who have died have done a lot of good things for us. There's been a lot of suffering, a lot of hard work, a lot of struggle to make us be here today. Lots of black people, you know that, right? Yeah, we didn't just come here by accident or by magic. Lots of people who died worked hard to make us come here, to make us survive. So what I'm going to do, because we're running late, I'm just going to call about 4 names. And I'm going to pour some libation to them. And when I do so, after I pour it, I'm going to say libation, and I want you to all say libation. Okay? Now, you don't pour libation to God. God doesn't need us to quench his or her thirst, right? Because they're quenchable. So, we ask for God's support and guidance in this function. We're also asking the ancestors to play an active role in what we do tonight. And so, I'm going to pour some libations. And the first libation I want to pour is for a man who was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, a black man, an African. His name was Kheper, K-E-P-H-E-R. And he built what they call the Great Pyramid. They also said that, you know the statue, the thing they call the Sphinx, with the huge face and the body of a lion? They said it was built in honor of him because he was such a great leader, a wise thinker, a great African leader in a very ancient and sacred place, Egypt. Black people there used to call it Kemet. That was the name they used. So I want to pour libations and ask Kheper, Pharaoh Kheper, to be with us tonight in spirit. Libation?
Libation.
Okay. I want to pour libation to a woman named Harriet Tubman. You might have heard of her. Harriet Tubman was a very strong, brave, proud black woman. And she helped many, many slaves to escape from the United States to Canada through something called the Underground Railroad. And she wouldn't allow any slave to turn back if they were feeling afraid or feeling scared. Because she knew if some of them turned back, they might tell the slave owner what the secret passages were. So you had to go with her or she would kill you. And she was never caught. She helped hundreds of slaves to flee slavery, to come to Canada. Did you guys know that? Chatham, Ontario. And she was never caught. So I want to ask for the spirit of Sister Harriet Tubman to be with us tonight. Libation. I want to call the spirit of Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was another very, very passionate, very proud, very strong black woman who in the southern United States, just after slavery ended, and there was another form of slavery, black people, even though they weren't in chains physically, they couldn't get work and they were still very much oppressed. And she fought and she fought and she defended and she spoke up and she put her life on the line all the time for us. So I want to call Sojourner Truth. Libation. And last but not least, I want to call El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Brother Malcolm X, or Black Shining Prince, who led a life of leadership, of strength, of African pride and dignity, of resilience, making sure that black people's interests were defended all the time. Uncompromising warrior, a beautiful, beautiful Africa. I want to call on his spirit to be with us tonight. Brother Malcolm X, libation.
Libation.
Thank you. Merci. Tonight we have a very special program for you. We have a group here at Wardenwood called African Youth United, a group of young people, and they're scattered around the audience. Some of them are shy, they're still standing by the door and outside and in the kitchen and so on. And they decided a few months ago that it would be really nice to honor Brother Malcolm X tonight and to do something really special. So we have a really nice program for you. And I want to introduce the person who's going to take us through the program, Sister Elaine, who is a child of this community, grew up in this community, knows everybody. Okay?
Good evening, everybody. Please, me know son and I eat no food, but my son so. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Sounds much better to me. Now, you heard a little bit about the AYU group. You guys know a little bit about them. They've been very active. Lots of things going on. And oftentimes, there's an old saying that goes, if a man steal a mango, or please blow up a woman's dress, that's making headlines in the foreign press. But our youths that are rated amongst the best, they get no headlines in the foreign press. That just describes our group. Because there's a lot of things that they've been doing, workshops, a lot of training has been happening. African history, of course, that's why you're all here tonight. Brother Paul has been bringing us to another level of spirituality. And we all know in our community, we're in need of spirituality. Lots of leadership development. Last but not least, they were a part of the Olympic committee the other day that was learning about what's going to happen with our youths when the Olympics gets here, which we know we're going to get it. And of course, the most important thing, and I'm going to keep mentioning this to you the whole night, we're doing a fundraiser. They're doing a fundraiser to go to the motherland. And I think that's one of the most important things that is going to happen, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I want y'all to dig deep in those pockets and help us to make it happen. But tonight is filled with a lot of exciting things. You're going to be wined and dined, African style. Okay? Wined and dined in true African style. We'll start off the evening with the Markham African Caribbean Drummers. Welcome, please. Thank you. I want to see you feel the vibes and get up and start to dance. Yes? Yes? Oh boy. Right now we have how can I describe this young man? His name is Hajio. His bio says he's a revolutionary poet and he's just like Brother Malcolm. And you know what? The rest speaks for himself. So would you come up here please? A round of applause please. Let the brother feel welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace, y'all. Peace and blessings unto each one. How y'all feeling? You feeling that love, that peace, a revolution like Malcolm right there? Y'all feeling alive today or what? Yes. I said, y'all feeling alive today or what? Yes. All right, then, family. My name is Haj, and I'm all about positive change. That's what revolution is all about. You know, if you don't know, forget whatever definition you heard about revolution before, and from this day on, try to, you know, in a moderate way, capsulize it in the sense of trying to make a positive change. That's what, you know, Al-Hajj Ali Al-Shabazz, Brother Minister Malcolm X, tried to do every day of his life for his wife and child and for all of us today. You all agree with that? I say, you all agree with that? Come on, we're celebrating Malcolm. We gotta be alive, you know? You gotta be alive. I mean, he's done so much for us, like many other revolutionaries and people that work for the people and gave of themselves for each one of us today. El-Hajj, Malik, El-Shabazz, spiritually raising me like the dad I never had. Brother Minister Malcolm X, unknown, except that a desire was shown, seeking intelligence and actual facts, representing revolution, striving to be right and exact. So if you all agree with that description of a man Malcolm, then please put your hands together with respect. I'm gonna start out with just a brief poem, and it's entitled Luminous. So I'm gonna do a longer poem entitled Recent Culture, and we started out late, so I'm gonna try to respect the time frame. Try maybe say it a bit quicker than I usually would, because I have a couple more poems I want to do for you all, but trying to stay within a brief time frame so we can, you know, get to the rest of the ceremony tonight. Luminous. Heaven shines a light, beating synchronized movement along with original rhythm. Time is always moving one way. It's no secret, but love is yours to keep, conceal it and share, wear it and care. Be luminous, shine inside out, make each day count, make each day a glorious experience. Hearing with open mental eye, wise not blind, see spiritual signs. Nature, sun and moon, symbolic rays of healing light. Do not drink the medicine they give. Natural tonic is the water of love. All we know is we know nothing except there is one God, one truth for one people, one culture, a people, a God of love. This is a luminous revelation. God is love, and with love He created each one of us. We possess heart and mind. God gave us each one. The heart is the seat of motivation. I am happy when words of love effectively reach one heart. The mind is what devises a plan of action. I am happy when words of peace effectively teach and reach one mind. My culture is love, and I know my roots. Before I am a Canadian, I am an American. Before I am an American, I am an African. But before I am an African, I am an angel from heaven. These are my roots. Going back to the source, I'm pointing out that the true direction is up, disregarding west and east, south and north. When some talk about the continent, it's frequently about slavery. But few speak about the fact that many of the slave owners were black. Now what's that? That is a lost mentality. That is a sick mind state. That is a sad betrayal, seldom shown, of common betrayal still known. Take care of your own before you leave your home. Uplift your seed until they are full grown. Make them know where they come from, but more importantly, teach and display through what you do that what they do every day is their culture, their way of life. Man-made religion is carried out like a day of life these days. Not even one ray of light shines from the average sermon which lack spiritual truth. No spiritually connected motivational syllables projected by preaching stage performers. The proof is on the nightly news. And that is why the people are not learning wearing the devil's shoes. Many continually walk towards a bad course. Roots and culture are subliminally forced on minds of many who feel guilty for not being Afrocentric or spiritual enough. So they eagerly go about buying kente cloth and all sorts of cultural stuff, making regular trips to get 3 sticks of incense, 4 black candles, telling everyone Jesus was a black man, altering musical preference. Speaking of Iyanla's, Van Zant, any chance they can. And last but not least, they must change their name, maybe Shabazz or Muhammad. But their state of mind remains the same. Industrialized by the capitalistic society in which they live, they still seek money and fame, forgetting why they came to earth, forgetting why they were allowed birth, permitted to exit one realm and chosen to leave the womb, entering the realm of their mother. They were not sent here to this special planet to despise each other. With sister competing against sister and brother competing against brother, that's something like a misnomer. My culture is love, whereas nationalism is another one of Satan's tricks. I was born in Columbia, Maryland, but have friends from every region who do not live by the ways of the 666. I have forgotten some information that I wish I could remember, but loving my neighbor is one lesson that sticks. Love is my discipline. I share practical knowledge and practice giving. I stay down to earth, natural, refined, true, and living. But my intention is to help the earth angels re-elevate. For those who still attend religious services, put down the collection plate. Because to serve God, you need not spend a dime. The Creator does not deal with silver and gold. If you feel me, clap your hands. Only pure wisdom and love. So teach the young and take care of the old. Money is a protection and should be used to help spiritual causes where needed. But the poor are as rich as the wealthy in the eyes of God. To think anything else is a mistake and unhealthy. Love is my staff of power, like Moses' rod. With it I perform miracles such as mine. My roots date back to the beginning, a physical time, when the physical universe was constructed by the great architect with the infinite mathematic mind. My culture manifests truth to help me instruct and heal the spiritually dumb, deaf, and blind, so we can all be united as one. Like the sun, our nature is to shine, so let the darkness be left alone. History shows how many are lost in the past. The divisions amongst the people cause inequity. The true origin is based upon what is divine. Teachings that lead to negative separation between like kinds are demonic. It's in no way ironic that my culture is love, while with glowing face, I appear on earth with eyes brown, hair black, not blue and blonde. For me to primarily focus on my spiritual background is right and not wrong. Physically, I know where I came from, but the spirit was first before the physical did come. The vibrations of God should affect our soul more than the sound of an African drum or Tibetan chant or Brazilian dance. Before we are anything, we are spirit creatures. Hopefully we are truth seekers and truth teachers. After we have found the spiritual gems we have sought, if not Our purpose here on earth will eternally be undiscovered. Whatever place we were born to be lovers, given life by a heavenly Father. Be proud of where you come from. Your essence comes from above. Your roots are in the stars, above the sun and moon, and your culture is love. That's roots and culture. I am not afraid in the presence of men. No man can deprive me of divine serenity. I am not afraid, heartbroken, trust shattered. I will be left in the rain 7 times wiser. I am not afraid to be by myself. Oneness with God is a lonely road. I am not afraid of a silent room. Insightful meditations arrive, mostly in quiet moments. I am not afraid, despite no appreciation and no love, because I appreciate who I am, and I love who I am becoming. I am not afraid, looking into the face of calamity, for I know death is rest in peace and life. Life is the great teacher. Come what may, I am not afraid. Peace. Hey, damn. Look at that queen right there. Representing for real. Sister is so divine. All natural and refined. I gotta speak upon this one, this African queen. This queen brings mental relaxation, just like the author of the 3 stages of meditation. The primary translation of her name is Queen of Africa. She is the voice of wisdom in the wind, flowing through accepting vicinities within verified inner boundaries. African descendant with background of exotic flowers and trees. Visualize a heavenly child of grace. She exhibits the divine attributes of love and peace, the sought after honor of sweet femininity, very confident and assertive, yet she exemplifies humility. This queen possesses finesse and beauty unaffected by the expected effects of aging. A beauty deeper than the roots of defying plants of endurance, surviving in scorched areas of dry, past soil. Negative ones can't spoil or foil her ways of determination. Learns lessons from Hajir and Kahar and not respect, check the advancement of righteousness. Promoted by prophetic love poets, supported by a refined, one-of-a-kind lady. That's right. Independent woman she is not rely on a man for anything. No king is required for this queen to exist. But if one admires her, and desires to intersect with her lifeline, intending to love her for a lifetime, he must complement her a regular pattern which is as abstract as a Thelonious Monk composition. He must be in tune with her female intuition and 4-dimensional vision, observing her methodical actions carried out with precision. While she smiles a smile brighter than moonbeams at midnight, her dreams are spiral rainbows. So her plan for tomorrow, what? Seriously amiss. No foolish talking. When she speaks, she always makes perfect sense. Learn from her ways, so ambitious and industrious, spiritually oriented, so for the riches of this materialistic world, this queen is not lust. Consistently she inspires others with optimistic strength along the lines of Mandela. In God she trusts. Unlike the original daughter of the dust, Eve, the unstable lover of Adam, this queen is steady, ready to face Armageddon's darkest day. You all could say the Creator's light illuminates her course. She is a reliable source of positive energy. Without question, she bestows a blessing upon any meeting of the minds, powwow or cipher. Ignite her secret, passionate place by speaking of the most natural elements, that's earth, air, water, and fire. This queen is poetry in motion like a Estelle and Maya. The essence of love and life can be seen because it was personified by this African queen. She is the voice of intelligence that infiltrates and subdues the seemingly ever-present legions of ignorance. Her emancipated and elevated, consecrated thoughts originate above and beyond the unexplored outer limits of the universe. That's what I had to say about this queen. I see a lot of them in the house tonight, you know what I'm saying? It's for all the ladies, brothers, show respect. Put your hands together for all the people, get out. You know what I'm saying? That's why, I'm a type of brother, I don't even celebrate Mother's Day. I'm not conditioned by society. I could care less about this. I try to live my life as a spiritual being. I don't care what a man tells me to do. I try to live by God's law. People try to tell me, okay, celebrate my mother on this one day. But how many of us show our mothers respect and love every day? And our fathers as well. So I'm saying right now, as a revolutionary, trying to make positive change, forget about societal conditioning. Forget about Valentine's Day. You don't need someone to, you kids down there, you don't need someone to tell you to buy someone some Valentine's Day. If you really love someone and you know it's real because God is love and that's a spirit of peace and freedom and healing and helping, you can just love them every day. You got on Valentine's Day, tell someone that you care for them deeply. That's what I'm putting something on you. Trying to control your mind. It's mind conditioning. We don't need that. So Father's Day, Mother's Day, all that, just kick that out the door and try to have real love 24/7 every day for real, you know? Some blessings. I do have some poems. I'm trying to sell them for just $2. But I can't stay. So all I'm trying to do, because I love you all, is I'm going to try to hand out a couple to some of the groups. You can have them as a gift, because I'm all about love, really. I wouldn't mind support, but I really have to reach somewhere else. But I'm going to pass a couple out, so I'll allow you to make some photocopies. And it's the poem I read today called I'm Not Afraid. So that's a gift I have for all of you tonight. Is that cool? Yeah. Right? And whenever it's at the bottom, so all keep in touch. Because, you know, we have to... It's like I'm writing a poem. I was writing a poem today called it's called The Path actually, but the hook or the chorus, it goes something like I don't know about tomorrow, but I'm living for today. So I choose to follow and let my heart lead the way. Y'all like that? It's cool, right? So you know, inshallah, God willing, I'll be here tomorrow. But if not, at least I'll leave you with one of my poems. Then you all can share it with your friends, because we can't be afraid. We must do with love, keep our mind open, not do with fear, and close ourselves off to the spirit of the Creator. You know, we must travel with the divine light as our guide. So I want to share with you before I go. But the last thing is we do have an event coming up, and I was asked to just tell you about it. It's called Visions of Science, and it's trying to encourage someone like the African youth to get into some like sciences and whatnot. It's an annual exhibition of science and technology. I can't remember how long it's been going on, but it's been going on for a while. 8 years. Say what? 8 years. 8 years? 8 years, girl. Thank you very much, sister. And it's June 9th and 10th, 2000 at the Medical Science Building, University of Toronto, 1 King's College Circle. And as I said, it's promoting science to the African, Canadian, and Caribbean community, Africans, to put it in brief. And Saturday, June 10th, from 10 to 6 p.m., they have all these special presentations and whatnot. If you haven't got one of these, you see your sisters up here who are part of the organization that put this together. They'll get you one. And there's some numbers for more information on this sheet of paper. And also, I was asked to remind you all, if you want to come out, try to come out as a family. Because if Malcolm was about anything, he was about family with his wife and his daughters. Y'all agree? So try to do things together, man. Because revolution is about policy change. That's about keeping a tight-knit community, tight-knit family, and, you know, just getting this world changed for, like, the seeds, young people. So, before I go, I just want the young people to let us, older people, hear you all make a joyful noise. You feel it like the young people. So put your hands together and let us hear you. And your joy. You all too. Come on, put your hands together. Let's hear your chance to make some noise. Come on. Alright? And we love you. We're trying to provide a positive example. So try to listen to our wisdom and share, with younger people. And just keep love alive. And that's all I have to say. I'm Hajia. Nice to meet you all. And I know we'll stay in touch. Peace and blessings. I'm out.
Make some noise for the brother. I have what is called a public service announcement. Everybody knows what that is, right? We're going to tell you about the food. You want to hear about the food? Yeah. $5 for the food. I don't know if you get dessert. I said, when you can go get $5 food and dessert. $5. For the kids, the meal is $3. Okay? And also, public service announcement once again. Anybody who's parked in tenant parking, please remove it or it will be towed. At the front desk, they have parking tickets or tags for you. So if you don't have one, please go get one. If you want to go outside and have your car when you go up there, I suggest you go get one. You all don't have to listen to me though. At this moment, we have a video that's put together by some youth in our community. All of them are shy to come up here and tell you about the video. It's bits and pieces about Malcolm. It being his day and all. It's a celebration for them and it's a celebration for you all. Please watch it, enjoy it. Well, we're running a little bit late, so I would ask that while the video is being shown, pretend you're at home and get your dinner. And come sit in front of the TV and enjoy your dinner. Okay? Thank you. I'm asking all the children. Good evening, everybody. Getting ready for the second half. I'm asking all the children to go to the childcare room, please. We'll be having a discussion that's geared toward adults. There's room for you to go eat, relax, and do kid stuff.
Wait.
Our brother Calvin sets up the table for a panel discussion. And we're going to have a discussion. And it's going to be heated. You know why? We're talking about Malcolm. Anytime we talk about Malcolm, people get heated. Some people like, some people don't like. Some people really, really like. And some people don't want to say what they really want to say. So therefore we have all kinds of things happening here. But right about now, I'm going to welcome two gentlemen. The first one, he doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll say his name, Akwatu Kente. For those of you who don't know him, Akwatu, walk up here. And while he's walking, I'll tell you a little bit. He's been in our community for many, many, many years. You might not want to hear this, but I watched him. I'm growing watching him, you know? We don't want to say we're close to the same age, but this man has done a lot for a community. He's very vocal. And a lot of what he says, not a lot, everything he says, most of the time, is the truth. And I say most of the time because I'm bugging him. I've known him for years. I enjoy listening to him and the message that he has to bring to our community. It's wonderful. Our next gentleman, 20 years in our community, Otis Richmond, from CKLN Community Radio. He's also a journalist. Otis, can you please come up with me? Thank you. And they will be talking, we will be sharing, they will be sharing, and we will be telling them yes, we like, no, we don't like, about the famous saying by Brother Malcolm, by any means necessary. And I will be handing them the microphone and taking my seat in the audience so they can hear my voice.
Hello, can everybody hear me? I'm supposed to have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to be, you might think I'm crazy, but I have a couple of questions to ask you.
This is Honda Civic outside, license plate 552 WFM, needs to be moved right now. Blocking it. You Honda, no?
I like to always find out who I'm speaking to, like what type of audience I have, and you might think I'm a little nuts, but how many people in this audience have heard of Pierre, who know who Pierre Trudeau is? How many people in this audience know who Maurice Bishop was?
I don't know.
How many people in this audience know who Walter Rodney was? Last time I did this out of York University, nobody knew who Walter Rodney was. How many people know who John F. Kennedy was? Does anybody here know who Don Drummond was?
You know nobody. You know.
Celine Dion. All right. Well, I must admit, when I spoke at York University, the audience here is much more, is hipper than at York University. Not one person knew who Walter Rodney was. I only have about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to say that today is May the 19th, and May the 19th is also the birthday of Ho Chi Minh. And I'm not going to, everybody here is hooked up to the internet and all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to drop these names. Ho Chi Minh, the great leader of the Vietnamese people, a man who Marcus Garvey used to go to his meetings. He was born on May 19th, 1890. That was 110 years ago. Also on May 19th, 1935, Lorraine Hansberry, a sister from the United States, who wrote a play called A Raisin in the Sun. She was born 65 years ago today. Also on May 19th in 1895, Jose Marti, a great Cuban who you can go back and do some research on. He was born on, he died in battle in Cuba. Jose Marti was a great person that inspired Fidel and inspired people from the Caribbean and Latin America. 25. And the year 1925 was a year that the World War I was occurring and was about to end, and it was only in 1885, the colonial powers had gone to Africa and carved up Africa like a turkey. The British took a piece, the Portuguese took a piece, the Dutch took some, and Malcolm was born around the time that Africa was attempting to recover from that, 1925. Also in 1925, you had people like Frantz Fanon of Martinique was born the same year. Patrice Lumumba of the Congo was born in the same year. And Malcolm, it should always be remembered that Malcolm was a product of African people, one from the United States, one from Reynolds, Georgia, and one from Grenada. Malcolm X's mother was named Louise Langdon Norton Little. She married a Little, so she became a Little. She was born in Grenada, and for people should realize that she spent some time in Montreal. She came from Grenada to Montreal, and she married her husband, Malcolm's father, who was living in Montreal at the time. I don't know if some people say he was resisting the draft, or I don't know what he was doing up here, but they were both Garveyites, followers of Marcus Garvey. They met in Montreal. That is your Canadian connection. And and they were both Garveyites. And there's a great book by Jan Carew called Ghosts in Our Blood, where they talk about all of that information. And Malcolm came to Toronto a few days before he died. He was right here in Toronto. If you know where the Reference Library is, down on Yonge Street, Asquith, I think. Austin Clark used to have a house there, and about a week before he died, he came up to do the Pierre Burton show, and he met with Austin Clark, and right here in Toronto. But Malcolm X essentially took the African-American struggle and attempted to internationalize it, and he did internationalize it. He stood on two legs. He was a member of the Nation of Islam, and then he broke with the Nation of Islam, and he formed two organizations. One, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, which was a religious organization, and the second organization was the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which was a political organization. And Malcolm used to say that you should keep your religion in the closet, keep it at home, and if it hadn't done anything for you, you need to forget about it anyway. Those are Malcolm's words, not mine. He stood on two legs. He formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity after the Organization of African Unity. And during that particular period of history, African people were, in 1954, 1955, Rosa Parks she didn't really start the civil rights movement, but she is credited because people had been struggling all along, and we should give her credit for being courageous as she was. But so Miss Parks refused to give up her seat to a Caucasian gentleman. And from 1955 until today, let me put it this way, from 1955 until around 1975, African people in the United States and other parts of the world were on the move. And Malcolm X was in prison at that particular point in time, and he had a background of, like many of us, many of our youth today are having problems with the prison system. Malcolm had problems with the prison system. He went to prison and came out of prison, and in 1954 joined the Nation of Islam and began to participate in this particular movement. And I wanted to say that one of the things that Malcolm contributed to our movement is that by going to prison, young people don't have to go to prison. I'm not saying that Malcolm was like Jesus Christ, but if Jesus died for our sins, then Malcolm went to prison for us. It's not necessary for us to go and be incarcerated for things that for breaking their laws. I'll say that they are their laws, but at the same time you have to exist in this particular system. So in 1955 the movement began, and the Nation of Islam, Malcolm started the Nation of Islam, and he joined the Nation of Islam in 1954, 1955, and he stayed with the Nation of Islam until 1963. And then he broke with the Nation of Islam over many issues. And I basically think that what Malcolm left the Nation of Islam over, the fundamental issue was over the question of leadership. Malcolm X saw a collective leadership. The Nation of Islam had a one-man charismatic leadership, which African people and other people have a tendency to follow. But we know that the charismatic leader, if something happens to the charismatic leader, the organization dies. Malcolm was attempting to build an organization that had a collective leadership, and that the leadership had men and women in it, not just men. And Malcolm X, what he did was he influenced groups like the Black Panther Party. He influenced groups like the League of Revolutionary Black Workers out of Detroit, the Republic of New Africa, the Congress of African People, these were all organizations that were founded in the United States. But I wanted to talk about the Panther Party because the Panther Party created leaders. When you think about the Black Panther Party, you think about Huey Newton, you think about Bobby Seale, you think about Elaine Brown, you think about Assata Shakur, who was in Cuba, you think about Tupac Shakur's mother, Afena Shakur, and you don't think about one particular leader. Malcolm X was the person that I maintained that was responsible for this collective leadership. And at the end of his life, Malcolm was arguing that women should be brought into the leadership of his organization. And he took a lot of heat for that. Lots of heat from men were saying that, basically women, this is a man's world and men should run these organizations and the women should be back in the kitchen preparing the food, looking after the kids and so on and so forth. Malcolm argued against that. He argued against that, and one of the things he did concretely to argue against that was he asked Maya Angelou, who was living in Ghana at that particular time, to come back to the United States and help him build the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And I basically wanted to close by saying that Malcolm X was the person that internationalized our struggle. Being a person that was from an African American and a Caribbean background, Malcolm knew about Marichaux from Grenada. The great Marichaux, who had a newspaper called the West Indian. Malcolm's mother used to read he and his many brothers and sisters Marichaux's papers. Malcolm said that travel broadens your scope. Malcolm was able to travel around the United States and build. When the Nation of Islam was formed, Malcolm had, the Nation of Islam had 4 mosques. By the time Malcolm passed away, they had mosques all across the country. In Los Angeles, California, where I grew up, you had Mosque 27. In San Francisco, you had mosques everywhere. Malcolm X, some people say dispute this, but Malcolm X founded the Nation of Islam's newspaper, Muhammad Speaks, which was a great newspaper. If you can do some research and go back and find copies of the Muhammad Speaks, it's one of the best papers that black people ever produced. Malcolm X also went to, he was a big fan is the wrong word, he was a supporter of the Cuban Revolution. This is a book here, Fidel and Malcolm, Memories of Meeting. If you can, this is written by a woman by the name of Rosemary Mealy out of Harlem. If you can get this book, please do. He was a big supporter of Cuba. He was a big supporter of the People's Republic of China. When the Chinese tested their atomic bomb in 1964, Malcolm was in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. He met with Julius Nyerere. Mohammed Babu, Julius Nyerere was the president of Tanzania at that time, and he said that that the people of color for the first time are on par with the imperialist powers. And first and foremost, I mentioned Cuba, I mentioned China, but Malcolm was a Pan-Africanist, and Malcolm went to Ghana, he went to Guinea, he met with Kwame Nkrumah, he met with Sekou Touré, he met with Azikiwe of Nigeria, he met with Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, he met with Milton Obote in Uganda, he met with Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, I said that already. He met with Babu, and he went to Europe, he went to France. And he had the interests of all African people and all oppressed people on his mind. And I think, Malcolm was the person that tried to start a collective leadership which included men and women. Malcolm X stood for self-defense. He also stood for education, and that's what I want to stress, that Malcolm X had a 4th grade education. He learned to read by studying the dictionary in prison, in the penitentiary. And he was a person that you could look at on TV, and he could debate with the scholars no matter what nationality, and he could defeat these scholars. There's still videotapes of Malcolm debating people at Oxford. There's a great speech of Malcolm at Oxford where Malcolm debates these people, these PhDs and so on and so forth, and intellectually devastates these people. And I think that is about 10 minutes. And Malcolm, we need to have some participants. I thought I was afraid when I got up here because I thought the younger people were going to be here, and I couldn't use all of these references. But I guess we're going to have a discussion afterwards. So I'm going to turn it over to Akwatu. Thank you very much.
Good evening. It's a nice spring summer coming. You can do better than that. Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to Paul asked me to talk about Malcolm's, how he can be positive for the youth. And so I have some points that will speak to that. But I will also speak to what I think, what Malcolm did for me. Because what Malcolm did for me really speaks to what I think Malcolm can and should do for young people today. I want to begin by thanking each and every one of you for the privilege of being able to share ideas this evening. It always is a privilege for me, and because I learn, I hope you learn from what I have to say. I would also like to thank the people, the young people who organized this event. I like the name so much, African People United. And you know it goes further than that. That's the name, but African People United can never be divided. That's the message, right? So I want to thank them for organizing this. And I only have $5. I came with $5 in my pocket. I put it in the $5, but I'm guaranteeing Paul can buck me up on Monday for the 20. That's my commitment to this, to their cause. I never speak before African people without paying tribute to the ancestors who make me possible. The same ancestors who I believe were instrumental in making Malcolm X possible. And so I want to cite 4, if time permits. I want to cite Martin Delany. Because to understand Malcolm X, you have to understand Martin Delany, one of our earliest Pan-Africanists. And I talk about Martin Delany's life, but I just want to quote from Martin Delany because of time. He said, "Every people should be the originators of their own destiny, the projectors of their own schemes, and creators of the events that lead to their destiny." This is in the 19th century. If you don't understand Marcus Garvey, you'll never understand Malcolm X. Otis talked about his father being a Garveyite and a Garveyite strain. But you have to hear Marcus Garvey to hear Malcolm X, and vice versa. And I like to quote Garvey to bring him to life this evening. When Garvey said, "Where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, his ambassadors, his army, his navy, his men of big affairs? Unable to find them, I will help to make them." You could still ask that question today. You could still ask that question today. And I believe Malcolm lived that question. And Malcolm's quest was Garvey's quest. And as we get into the debate, we could go even further. If you don't hear Billie Holiday, you'll never understand Malcolm X. Malcolm loved Billie Holiday. And Billie Holiday sang a song that wasn't even a song she wrote, but when she sang that song was so powerful. So powerful that song could convey to you the spirit that must have made Malcolm so angry. Kept him up at night. Southern trees bear strange fruit. Blood on the leaves, blood on the roots. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scenes of the gallant South. The bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, and then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is the fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rut, for the tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop. You know, when I talk tonight, the thing that I really want to convey to you is how much Malcolm loved us, and how much when we love Malcolm, we liberate ourselves and give honor to his name. Malcolm X was very important to me growing up. And I remember meeting Paul 22 years ago. And when I met Paul 22 years ago, our competition was who had read Malcolm X's autobiography more. He said he read it 12 times. I said I read it 13 times, right? Why did I read Malcolm X's autobiography 13 times? It's because when I came to Canada at the age of 12, I left Trinidad. And my nickname in Trinidad was Perry Mason, because I wanted to be a lawyer. And I used to argue all the time. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And when I came to Canada and I went to school downtown to Winona, and I told my teacher I wanted to be a lawyer, he said, no, you can't be a lawyer. I was going to go to a vocational school. And when I read Malcolm X's autobiography, actually I heard about that story. That story resonated so true. They were going to send me to a vocational school only because my father intervened. That was number one. And I believe that what happened to me is still happening today. That's why Malcolm X's life is still relevant, and his message is still relevant, because our young people today are being told they can't be lawyers, can't be scientists, can't be professors, can't be prime ministers. And they have to know that we've always been told that, but it hasn't stopped us up to now. Malcolm's underachievements, as well as his achievements, are very important. Some people want to just focus on Malcolm, the leader of the Nation of Islam. But I think you need to understand Malcolm the criminal. You need to understand Malcolm the child. You need to understand Malcolm the traveler. And all aspects of Malcolm are essential to understanding the conditions of African people. Time doesn't permit me to get into all aspects of Malcolm. I just want to get into three. I want to get into Malcolm, the criminal drug addict. Or you could say that differently, the drug-addicted criminal. Whichever one. Because as a drug-addicted criminal or criminal drug addict, he represented the result of criminal social forces. He was really the product of criminal social forces that produced him and continue to produce black people who become criminals. And that's very important today, because in today's world, the forces are there to turn us into criminals, especially black men. So it's very important to understand Malcolm, the drug-addicted criminal. I think it's also important to understand Malcolm, the self-taught thinker, the self-taught intellectual, the self-taught organizer. Because as someone with a couple degrees, the most important lessons I've learned in life as a black person, as an African man, have been the self-taught lessons, which began with the lessons of Malcolm X. Thirdly, in the third point, Malcolm the lawyer, Malcolm our lawyer. He never became the lawyer that he could have been technically, but I believe that he became black people's lawyer. The best lawyer we could ever get. The best lawyer money could buy. And I believe that in being our lawyer, in the way that he was, he showed us that each and every one of us, any one of us, could be that lawyer too. Very important. His crime years are important. About 6 months ago, statistics came out that showed that America has the largest population in prison in the world. And what that means was that America has the largest population of blacks in prison in the world. There are more black men in prison in America than there are black men in many Caribbean islands in the prisons of America. Why is that important? Malcolm said of his crime years, he used to have a stick. When I was in prison, don't be shocked when I say I was in prison, you're still in prison. That's what America means, prison. That's what the West means, prison. We're still in prison. How millions of African people every day in Sudan, Sierra Leone, Angola, Brazil, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, America. 1 million black men in America's prisons. And many of us, we don't even deal with it because we think we can't. Because we're still in prison. Our minds are still in prison because we're not being educated to break out of prison. When you're being educated to break out of prison, that's when you know you're being educated. And Malcolm X taught us that we are in prison. And I believe as the day he said it, it's the same today. As much as he was in prison, we are still in prison. And I could go on, but I'm going to run through. I think he was a self-taught leader. Critical, because we're still in prison. And when I meet young black, because I still meet young black people who can't read, don't want to read. Don't want to read. So, I always give away his autobiography. Why? Because here was a man who taught himself to read, and he started with the letter A. We need symbols like that, metaphors like that, because we continue to be in prison. He had a life that was degenerate, but he committed himself to living a good life, eating good, thinking good, doing good, being good. Many of our young people look at the forces around them and they say, why? I can't be this, I can't. You can't get a job. Because if you go out there, you're not going, the white man has 10 times the chance of you. Even though you have the better qualifications, you can't get it. As a self-taught leader, I think it's important to look to Malcolm. I'm actually up to 10 minutes. I think Malcolm was our greatest lawyer. The lawyer for the black race. In being our lawyer, he talked about the case that still needs to be made. Because many of us still suffer from the same situation. We are still in the same circumstances that Malcolm X, that produced Malcolm X. He said, you don't catch hell because you're Baptist. You don't catch hell because you're Methodist. You don't catch hell because you're Democrat or Republican. You don't catch hell because you're Jamaican. You don't catch hell because you're from Africa. The same message applies today in Canada. Why do we catch hell? Why do we come here educated and our children are less educated than we who come here to struggle? Because we are black people and because there are forces in society that are so oppressive that if we don't understand what it means to be black, we'll be going downwards always. To promote Malcolm's message and legacy is very simple. You have to define your culture, define your problem. We still have the same problem with light skin, the same problem. Bleach. The only people who buy bleaching to bleach their skin is African people. We the people who make the bleach money. Make these people who make these chemical products that give you cancer. In Africa and the Caribbean, we're the ones. We need to define the culture, define the problem, so that we can define the solution. I hope we have I don't want to drag on, so I hope we have a discussion. I hope I'm hoping there's very little to disagree about. I'm hoping there's very little to disagree about because here was a man who loved us so much that he gave his life willingly. He wasn't a saint. He wasn't a religious. He did bad, but he gave his life willingly for black people. What more could you ask? What more could you need? We don't need another Malcolm. We just need people who say, boy, this guy was so good, my child has to know. My child has to honor this man because this man was the best that we could ever be. The best that I could ever be.
Anybody have any questions, anything they want to say? Discussion time. But before we even go there, remember that behind every man, there has to be a good woman. So while we're talking about Malcolm, we need to honor Dr. Betty. Most of you know who Dr. Betty Shabazz is? Yes? No? Yes? Everybody knows who she is? No? Dr. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X's wife. She passed away 2 years ago. And I feel good because I had the pleasure of meeting her. I had the pleasure of meeting Alex Haley. I think that was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. And when I came back and I showed all my friends, you know, what she wrote for me and what she gave me a poem. It said, from her husband Malcolm, it was to her. It said, to educate a man is to educate an individual, but to educate a woman is to liberate a nation. And that meant the world to me, because we know we're the women who have the babies. We're the ones who have to educate them first before we let them into the school system, because we know what the school system does to them. If they get a hold of them before we do, we're in trouble. So anybody have anything they want to say?
Good evening, everybody. I would have been very glad if we have the children here, because speaking humbly, I believe that most of us we are in more crisis than these children. I mean, we are unable to actually grapple with, you know, these changes as they arise. I mean, changes that affect us as a people. But I believe that these children, the children that I saw here earlier when I came in, of course they were rowdy, they were making so much noise. But I have hope that these are the people who, if they are able to stand up, they are the people who would liberate us as a people, as a black people. And I will take a cue from the lady, what she said, you know, before I came up, that to educate a woman is to educate a nation. Trust me. Most of us as black people, look at the NBA, look at most of the successful black men today. They were raised by single mothers. We are a people in crisis. Trust me, we are in very, very deep crisis. And why I'm here, what I want to talk about briefly is that, most importantly, we, just like this gentleman said, we are a people who are being discriminated against. But it's not only us. The Chinese are being discriminated against, the Indians, the Arabs. I mean, the whole world is a struggle. I'm not going to be pointing fingers at the white man. Even the white man is being discriminated against. If a white man is in prison with, you know, a lot of black people in prison, he is in danger. It's a world of struggle. But we cannot survive as an island. The world we are living in today, we cannot survive as a nation within a nation. We have to use the system to advance our causes. That was what Martin Luther King was all about. He did not say, I like Malcolm X. I've read a few things about Malcolm X. I am not here to reduce the status of Malcolm X. Nor am I here to praise Martin Luther King over Malcolm X. But the point is, an individual hardly can advance over his society. It's a tragedy. You can hardly advance over your society. You have to align yourself with society. Use the forces within society to advance your own good. So we as a people have to start somewhere. That was Booker T. Washington that said that the man who starts late in a race has to run faster. We are actually starting late in this race. You only hear about the black man when it's sports time, when it's passionate time, you know, and stuff like that. But when it's about inventions, when it's about research, we don't hear about the black man. I'm an African, actually. I come from Nigeria, you know, but something about the American heritage, you know, I believe that knowing America is knowing myself as a black man, even though I'm coming from the ancestral land. Knowing America, the dynamics of American society today is knowing yourself as a black man. Being a black man is not just a skin. It's not just skin deep. So what I want to say, why I said I would have loved to have the children here is there are two important things that we have to address today. One, education. Education. It makes me cry. Of course I come here, I have, you know, been through most of my formal education, and I have to go through a lot of struggle to re-establish myself in my profession. But it makes me cry to see that most of the black people here, most of my brothers and my sisters here in America are hardly educated. Formally they are not, I mean in the average, and generally they are not conscious. You know, we talk about, you know, we have to eat the spiritual food. There's no spiritual food anywhere. You have to be educated to use the system. That's what I'm saying. We have to send our children to school. And that's why I pay a lot of tribute to the women. The women actually hold us as a people. We would have gone to pieces. We talk about the black people in prison, it's just men. The women hold us as a people. And I am here to encourage the women to continue to hold us. Strive, fight to see that your children remain in school. Save them from drugs, from prisons. But that's where they'll end. Most of us are the black man is not economically empowered.
What's your question, brother?
I'm not actually asking a question. I'm trying to say.
We only have X amount of time.
Yes, actually, what I want to say is that, please, we have to use the system. We have to strive to see that our children remain in school so that they can get that education and develop the consciousness to use the system to advance themselves as a people.
I don't want to bust anybody's bubble, but I wanted to say that I support the brother on the question of education. There was a group that we played on the video. I would like to commend these young brothers for that video. Dead Press. They have Let's Get Free, and I know those gentlemen. I met them. I support them, but there's one track on there that I do not support. It's a track called They Schools, where it could be interpreted that they're telling black youth that schools are no good, that schools are rotten, and they are. And we definitely have to have education. Like we used to say, we have to have two sets of notes, one for ourselves and one for the system. Doctors, we need pilots, and we can only do that through going through some sort of education system. Now I'm going to bust everybody's bubble. We cannot use the system, I don't think. I think the system is the capitalism is what enslaved us. And capitalism is our problem. That is the difference. And even Martin Luther King hated capitalism from the beginning, straight up. If you want to talk about the similarities between Martin and Malcolm, it was a question of capitalism. That's why Malcolm X is dead today, because he attacked capitalism. That's why Martin Luther King is dead today. That's why Angela Davis was put in prison. That's why so many Black Panthers went to prison. That's why Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. That's why they hate Fidel Castro. That's why they hated Ho Chi Minh. And I agree with another great African man by the name of William Edward Burke Du Bois. He said, capitalism is a system that enslaved us. It will never free us. Thank you.
I just want to make respond to a few points that the gentleman just made. Some in agreement, some not so completely in agreement. I agree that we need to be educated, because without literacy, not just A's, B's, and A, B's, and C's, but mathematical literacy, but scientific literacy. Scientific literacy is so critical because there are things happening in science, in the DNA, they're discovering things that have major implications for black people, and there are no black people there to translate the discoveries for us. I mean, just by the end of this year, they will have mapped the whole DNA for the human being. And we have very few African people who can tell us what this means. They're cloning, they're doing all kinds of things. And we need people to be able to look at what's happening and tell us what this means for you. So that's very important for us to get an education. But it's also very important to understand that all of the leaders that's causing us so much hell are educated leaders. Jonas Savimbi, PhD. All these guys who wrecking havoc across the African world. 90% of them have degrees. 90% of them are educated men. But yet still they're not able to advance the African cause. I think it's more than capitalism, because I think communism, communist Russia, and communist China were equally anti-black with capitalist America. I say that because of the experiences of black people in Russia right up to today. I say that because of the experiences of black people in China. We had a lot of Africans in China who went to study in China. And do you know there would be riots if an African man with a Chinese woman? Riots, the whole cities and thousands of riots when some African guy went in with a Chinese woman. This was communist China. Why the hatred for African people in a communist society? I think there is something fundamental about the anti-black attitude that exists across the world that isn't just explained by capitalism, that goes beyond capitalism, just the question of power. To power, a basic question of power. Who has it? Who wants it? Who doesn't have it? Poorest people with the richest continent, and everybody wants what's on that richest continent. Just as much. The European was in there first, in this modern age, and others are going in there just as fast. So I think it's more than capitalism, less than communism. I think it's a question of power for African people. And finally, about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, I believe if there wasn't a Martin Luther King, there wouldn't be a Malcolm X. We need both. And they have always been, in the West, in the African American experience, two vibes. Because we have this struggle. And it's whichever strategy works, but it explains which force is dominant. So it's Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, Martin Delany, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, back and forth, back and forth. And as Malcolm X himself said, we're not fighting for integration, nor are we fighting for separation. We are fighting for recognition as human beings. That's what he said then, and I think that's what we're still fighting for now.
Anybody else have anything, any question? Come on up here.
No, I don't need it.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, we are oral people, so I certainly can make myself heard. Malcolm X's famous comment, by any means necessary. Like, could either of you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of our young people particularly listen to that snippet, I call it. Many of them having not read the book or having not heard many of the speeches, and I think in many ways misinterpret that. Could you just expound a little bit on what precisely Malcolm X meant when he said by any means?
Any means necessary, I think Malcolm was talking about you would do whatever it was necessary in order to be free, not just go out and physically fight someone. If you had to come to that, you would do that. And you believe in self-defense. However, you would Malcolm X, enemy is necessary. This is going to sound crazy. I mean, you would write a letter if Avery Haynes, what's her name? Avery Haynes from he would make a statement. You would write a letter. You would register to vote. You would do. It's a tactical thing. By any means necessary, left it open. If you had to go to war, you would go to war. But that's not all you were about. Any means necessary meant that you would have to politically educate yourself. Now, Malcolm was talking about inside the United States of America. He was telling people to register to vote. Just like Martin Luther King was telling people to register to vote. He was talking about building a third party. Not the Republican or the Democratic Party. He was talking about a third party similar to what Jesse Jackson could have did, but didn't, because I love my brother Jesse, but he really likes the limelight a little bit. He has a spotlight complex. I mean, he likes that. He could have broken and formed a third party at that particular time, but Jesse wanted to be, was it 84 when he wanted to go on TV and make that speech. And yeah, by any means necessary, I think the young people have taken that to mean we go to war. And that's it. But it means that if we have to go to war, we do go to war, but that's not all we have to do. We have to prepare for whatever we do. And we're going to take on the system. We have to take it on mobilizing millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people, which means that we have to have a lot more meetings like this, and we have to talk, and we have to educate the young people. All, like from the Muslims have a thing about from the womb to the tomb, and I think that's where we have a problem as a people. We need to have our education where it can address the young people all the way up to the elders, and the methods would be different, because we can't. I don't think we can teach the youth the same thing that if we're going to teach the youth about Egypt and things of that particular nature, it has to just be broken down to them in a different way. We're going to, but if we're going to have these, and I'm not saying this is highfalutin, but it's different. People are on different levels, and we have to have educations for I forgot the word I'm trying to say. It's a division of labor, and a division of labor where some people do this, some people do that, some people do this, and by any means necessary, I think that our youth have taken. I think the system is telling the youth that by any means necessary needs to go out and take on the system in one way, because I think that's easily the way they can mow us down.
I think by any means necessary means that our struggle is so complicated, and the forces that are working against African people are so great and so powerful that no one strategy will ever work. You need all kinds of strategy working all the time. One of the things people don't understand is that Malcolm X understood and appreciated his role vis-a-vis Martin Luther King. He knew that what he said could make King's life easier or harder. And he said things at specific times, depending upon what was happening with King, so that he could help King indirectly do what he was doing. King himself may not have done it to the same extent that he did, but I think that Malcolm himself recognized that we need all kinds of strategies, and the problem for us is really when we say, no, we're not going to do anything that way. No, we're not going to go down that road. No, we'll go down any road. We'll go down any road. And we will not distance ourselves from anyone, because we are all fighting for the same thing, although we may be fighting for it in different ways. So it's very important for us to respect the different kind of struggles that people are making to advance African people. So that my focus might be education. And if I go to school and I go to get a master's degree in education, because I want to be a teacher, I want to be a principal, because I believe that's where I can do my best work, that's great. Respect me for that. But if I believe that my best work is to go out there and protest every day against the police, because they can kill black people and have no fear of being punished ever. And I know I can't get into my studies, I can't get into the book thing, because really, this is so much crap. The man with a master's degree better respect me. And the man who's building a business, from 5 cents to 10 cents to $10 to $1 million, we need to respect him too, because somebody has to create jobs for African people when they get out of school. And so the struggle requires all the means, all the working all the time.
Thank you, Watu. Anybody else have any more questions, anything they'd like to say?
I have a comment and a question. The comment, okay, I'm from Haiti, from the Caribbean, and I'm very proud of Africa, of African culture and everything. And it's really, I don't really appreciate when I see black people against, like they form a clique, like we are Caribbean and like we are superior than African. I hate when they do that. And it really makes me very sad. Because the other day, in February, I was organizing something in my workplace for Black History Month, and the black people in my, you want to do something? It's like they are ashamed of showing our culture, and they were ashamed of doing things. But this is something that I really don't like. So this is my comment. In my question, I'm happy to see that there are people who are really focusing on our progress as black people. But I don't understand why there is so much violence between us, like in many nations, black nations in the world, like Zaire, in my country, Sierra Leone, everywhere, Rwanda. Do you have an explanation as to why black people cannot be unified and do something together, but they're already black people?
I think that I'm going to go back to the whole not only are black people fighting each other, but I think that Eastern Europeans are running among themselves probably more than us. I don't think it's only African people that fight each other. The Irish, they duke it out pretty good. I mean, the Irish duke it out. I think that a lot of the conflicts that are taking place in Africa are because of the minerals that imperialism, I think we have to be clear on who our enemy is. Once again, I'm getting myself in trouble. But imperialism is, U.S. imperialism, I think, is the biggest enemy of all people, period. Working people, period. And it is in their interests, and they're fighting against the Japanese. They're fighting against Japanese imperialists, I might say, ruling people of Japan. Britain, France is still trying to stay in there, and a lot of these conflicts are caused because of and African people. We are human beings, and we have classes just like other people, and we have collaborators. And those collaborators who want a piece of the money will support the system, and they will unite with the capitalists and the imperialists, and they will start these particular fights, and they will participate in those fights. I mean, Papa Doc, like Fred Hampton used to say, you know, Papa Doc hated this piece of paper because it was white. But he said, I'm a black man, let me exploit you. If you're from Haiti, you know about Papa Doc, Baby Doc, and Mobutu. But a lot of people get mad when people talk like this, but for all the billions that Mobutu embezzled, there were some white folks and some Japanese folks and some German folks who were embezzling more than him. I mean, Mobutu, as bad as he was, as bad as and vicious as Papa Doc and Baby Doc were, the bigger capitalists were the ones that basically created that particular thing. And I think that our struggle is not just about race, It's about class, and there are some of us who will support the system of capitalism and will go for the money, and it's happened to all people, and we are not the only people that are fighting. Like I say, if you watch the news, you look at Yugoslavians, look at Yugoslavia, what happened to that country. The whole Eastern Europe, like I said, there's many examples. It's not just us as a people. Those are my thoughts, and I may be wrong, but I honestly believe that.
I don't have the answer to that, but I think what you need to add into the question is it's a racist world, and it's been a racist world for 2,000 years. It's been particularly vicious in the past 500, but it's been vicious, it's been racist, there's been attacks against African people for 2,000 years, from the destruction of ancient Egypt or Kemet right down to the destruction of the Congo by the Portuguese. And to me, it's a given. Racism is a given. You know, when Sierra Leone, there was a ceasefire in Sierra Leone, and they couldn't raise, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations couldn't raise $25 million to pay for the ceasefire, but they raised $1 billion to pay for Kosovo. $1 billion for Kosovo, but they couldn't raise $25 million to buy some guns from some stupid little guys running around in Sierra Leone. Why? Because it's a racist world. But it's been a racist world for 500 years. It's a given. I believe we have the most miseducated elite in the world. We don't have more problems. Everybody, China's been discriminated against, India's been discriminated against. White men don't like them any less or more than likes us. But their elites have made conscious decisions about what they need to do to get ahead, even for their own selfish ends as elites. That's why India has the kind of nuclear capacity, the kind of educational strategy to build their scientific capacity that it does. Because India plans to be a world power. Japan wasn't always where it is. South Korea wasn't always where it is. Nigeria could have been where they are. Nigeria had more capital flowing through the banks in Nigeria than they had flowing through South Korea. But all the scientists in Nigeria are gone because the ridiculous elite in Nigeria are so oppressive, nobody can stand up and say anything without fear of being shot or going to prison. We have the worst elite, an elite that doesn't think in terms of African people's interests in the long term, an elite that doesn't think in terms of what's going to happen to Africa. And I believe that's one of the major reasons, because I believe the racism that exists is a given. And if somebody has been knocking you for months and years and you still act the same way that you're acting, either waiting for him to intervene or complaining when he doesn't intervene, what do you deserve? I was listening to the Ethiopian ambassador complaining about the lack of world response to what's taking place in Ethiopia. But they have enough wherewithal to go and try and crush Eritrea. And what do they expect the world to think? What kind of elite can make the kind of decision? You got millions of people starving, but your national interest dictates that you use all your resources to fight a little stupid war rather than feed 12 million people? A ridiculous elite. The forces of the world are against us. That's a given. So we need to act in a way that recognizes that and plans for that and goes beyond that. And whether those forces are capitalist forces, communist forces, they all are inevitably, or they have been, anti-black forces. And that's the problem. I believe I'm a human being, just like everybody else in the world. And my humanity is equal. I'm not superior to anyone, black, brown, red, or yellow. That's the reality in the world. But there's another reality around power and around the way the world feels about black people that we need to really think about and work on. That's not the answer, but it's a partial answer.
The problem is we don't have enough of this. We don't have enough of this time in our communities to get together. The only time we get together in our communities is when we're protesting against somebody. We're protesting against, if a police shot somebody, we're protesting. But when our own is being shot, I don't see no protest. So we don't have enough of this. Here's, we're going to close off due to the fact that once again we're operating on West Indian time and we're out of time. We have about 45 more minutes before it's over. We have some entertainment, and we have some more knowledge to share with you. At this time, I'm giving each of them 2 minutes, and I'm timing them to give a summarize what they, each of you, what is first?
I'd just like to speak to say that I think Malcolm X, the lesson he made was that in capitalism, it's not just racism that we have to deal with, we have to deal with capitalism. And I would like to say that one of the greatest countries on the planet Earth is Cuba. And I think that Fidel Castro cannot go anywhere in the black world and not be, without being mobbed. The reason for this is because African people are intelligent people, and they know the contribution that, not him, but the people of Cuba have made. And the people of Cuba have a different social system, which Malcolm X was looking at the time of his passing. And this social system allowed the troops to go to South Africa, not South Africa, to Angola, to help defeat the South Africans. Without the aid of the Cuban troops in Angola, South Africa would still be in slavery today. Mandela said that, and that was because the Cubans did not go along with the Soviet Union. Fidel Castro at that particular point had a disagreement with the Soviet Union and went in anyway. His whole revolution on hold in order to help defend other people. Some social systems believe that if there's oppression, you help people. The Cuban people have donated their blood. They're educated. They had more doctors before this whole problem with the Soviet Union. They had more doctors in the world than the World Health Organization, than any other country in the world. Grenada, who is Dr. Marichal, the leader of the Maurice Bishop Patriotic Movement. He was educated in Cuba. So I think it's not fair to say communism is this and socialism is this. There's two systems, like as Kwame Ture used to say all the time. African people have the choice. We have to choose between or socialism. That's it.
My piece with some words from Malcolm X would stay with me ever since I was 13 years old, 27 years. And I know these words by heart because they're so powerful for me. To understand black people's situation today, you have to go back to the slave plantation. On the plantation, there were two kinds of slaves. The house Negroes and the field Negroes. The house Negroes, they lived in the house near master. They lived good. They ate good because they ate his food, what he left. They lived in the attic or the basement. But still, they lived near their master. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. If the master said we, the house Negro would say, we. If the master got sick, the house Negro would say, what's the matter, boss? We sick. He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to that house Negro and say, let's run away, let's get away from here, that house Negro would say, where are you going? Where can you find a better place than this? Where are you going to get a better job than this? That was that house Negro. On the same plantation, there were the field Negroes. The field Negroes, those were the masses. There were always more Negroes in the field than there were Negroes in the house. The Negroes in the field caught hell. They had leftovers. The Negro in the house lived high up on the house. The Negro in the field didn't get nothing but what was left of the insides of the heart. They call it chitlins nowadays. In those days, they called it what it was. Guts. That's what we were, gut eaters. And some of you are still gut eaters. The field Negro was beat from morning till night. He lived in a hut, in a shack. He wore old cast-off clothes. and he hated his master. He was intelligent. That house Negro loved his master, but that field Negro, and remember, they hated the master. If the master got sick, the field if the master's house caught on fire, the field Negro would pray for a wind, for a breeze. If you came to the field Negro and say, let's run away from here, that field Negro wouldn't say, where are we going? He would say, any place is better than here. Malcolm said, we got field Negroes in America today. I believe, to some extent, we are all house Negroes, and to some extent, we are all field Negroes. We are house Negroes when we think this is the best life you could have. So you don't go back to the Caribbean. You don't go back to Africa. You don't go into the poor black communities and give service and work there and live there. That's being But we are also all field Negroes. Because no matter how good it gets, no matter how much money is in the bank, no matter how secure you think you are, if you step out there in the street and things are rough, the economy is down, you're a nigger to this society in Canada, in America, in England, in France, in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Nigeria, in Kenya. Black life is cheap all over. Black life is cheap here, it's cheap in Africa, it's cheap in the Caribbean, it's cheap in Brazil, it's cheap in Europe, cheap all over. And I believe African people, that's the bottom line. When we begin to truly love the way Malcolm loved us, the war is over. Because that's the major battle, you know. Loving ourselves. Thank you very much.
At this time, we're going to have a draw, as which I would like one of the young. First, no, yeah, okay. Oh, yes.
You can't keep it still for this. Yeah, look up. Let me take it out. Shut up. Latino, con